The scent of graphite and turpentine had been Andre Walker's constant companions. His small, cluttered studio, nestled above his family's century-old lumberyard, was a haven of vibrant canvases and half-finished sculptures. Wood was his lifeblood. He'd grown up amongst the scent of pine and cedar, learning to respect its grain, its strength, its very spirit. He wasn't just a carpenter like his father and grandfather. He was an artist who translated the soul of wood into forms that spoke. Business had been steady, his art gaining slow but appreciative traction. Life, if not perfect, was profoundly good. Then came the fire. It started in the lumberyard, a rogue spark from an old sawdust collection system, catching in the tinder-dry heaps. Andre was upstairs, lost in the delicate curve of a new sculpture, when the first distant shouts reached him. By the time he looked out, the sky was already an angry orange, and the roar was no longer distant. He barely made it out, gasping, coughing, the heat scorching his lungs and the sight of his studio, his life's work, his family's legacy, dissolving into a maelstrom of flame, searing his eyes and soul. He stood across the street, wrapped in a blanket provided by a kind stranger, watching the edifice that held generations of memories crumble. The heat was a living thing, pushing him back, yet he couldn't tear his gaze away. The fire department fought valiantly, but the dry wood and volatile chemicals of the workshop were too much. By dawn, only skeletal remains stood against the bruised morning sky, blackened and smoking. Ash rained down, dusting his hair, his clothes, the ground, like a grim, perpetual snow. The days that followed were a blur of questions, insurance forms, and the hollow ache in his chest. His friend, Albert, a grizzled, no-nonsense man who owned the hardware store down the street, was a constant, if quiet, presence. He brought coffee and meals, listened more than he spoke, and simply sat with Andre in the crushing silence of his temporary apartment. "It's all gone, Al," Andre whispered one evening, staring at a wall that wasn't cluttered with his art. "Everything. My studio, my work. The smell of wood that was home." Albert just grunted, polishing his glasses. "Part of it is, yeah. Not all of it. You're still here, Andre. That's the important part." But Andre didn't feel important. He felt like a ghost haunting the ruins of his own life. The smell of smoke clung to him, not just on his clothes, but in his mind, a constant reminder of what he'd lost. He couldn't bring himself to even sketch, the blank page feeling an impossible chasm. Weeks turned into a month. The insurance process was slow, the promise of rebuilding a distant, almost mocking concept. One afternoon, driven by some inexplicable urge, Andre walked back to the site. The air was still thick with the acrid scent of burnt wood, though the smoke had long dissipated. What remained was a landscape of charcoal and ash. Twisted metal beams rose like grotesque fingers, but it was the wood that captured his gaze. Once proud planks of pine, sturdy beams of oak, delicate cuts of cedar, all were now uniformly black, some reduced to brittle charcoal, others merely kissed by the flames, their grain still visible beneath a layer of soot. He bent down, picking up a piece of timber. It was surprisingly light, crumbly at the edges. His fingers traced the hardened, carbonized surface. It was no longer wood, not in the way he knew it. It was something else. Transformed. He spent hours sifting through the debris, not looking for salvageable items, but simply observing. The textures fascinated him. The deep, velvety black of complete char, the lighter, dusty gray of ash, the occasional whisper of red where a piece had caught fire and then been starved of oxygen. There was a strange beauty in it, a testament to raw power and the relentless march of destruction. Yet, even in its death, the wood held a story. He started collecting. Small, oddly shaped pieces of charred wood. Ash, carefully swept into plastic bags. Albert found him one day, his hands stained black, a strange glint in his eyes. "What in tarnation are you doing, Andre?" Albert asked, a hint of concern in his voice. I don't know, Al," Andre admitted, holding up a particularly striking piece of scorched maple. It's a part of what was. It's still wood, just in a different form." Albert shook his head, a slight smile playing on his lips. "You always did see things differently, kid." That was the spark. The initial, hesitant step towards something new. He brought his morbid treasures back to his temporary apartment, arranging them on a large sheet of plastic on the floor. He began to experiment. He tried to clean the pieces, but found that scrubbing away the char diminished their character. He tried to preserve them, to fix the fragile ash. One evening, staring at a pile of fine ash, an idea, both absurd and compelling, struck him. What if he could use the ash? Not just as a memory, but as a material? He mixed a small amount of the pulverized ash with a binder, a simple artist's medium he'd used for other projects. The result was a thick, dark paste. It wasn't paint, not yet, but it had a texture, a depth, a presence. His first piece was small, almost accidental. He took a piece of charred plywood, a survivor from his studio's floor, and with a careful brush, began to apply the ash paste. He wasn't aiming for anything specific, just exploring the medium. As the dark pigment spread, something began to emerge. A shape, indistinct at first, then coalescing into a silhouette of a phoenix, wings unfurled, rising from a smudged, fiery base. The irony was not lost on him. It was crude, almost childlike, but it was his. And it was made from the very elements that had destroyed his past. This was André's new beginning. He spent countless hours in his makeshift workspace, which soon overflowed with his unusual materials. He learned to stabilize the charred wood, sometimes using a clear sealant, other times leaving the raw, friable texture intact. He experimented with different ratios of ash to binder, creating varying shades of gray and black, from a ghostly pale to an almost obsidian depth. He learned to press, to sculpt, to layer, to polish. His art was stark, raw, yet deeply contemplative. He created abstract pieces that captured the chaotic swirl of smoke and flame, the lingering desolation. He sculpted figures, ethereal and skeletal, from the more robust pieces of charred wood, their forms imbued with a haunting beauty. He created landscapes of memory, using the ash to paint the skeletal trees and shadowed ruins of what once was. His greatest challenge was not the medium itself, but his own mind. Each stroke, each carefully placed piece of charred wood, was a constant reminder of the fire. Sometimes the smell, even of the inert ash, would conjure vivid images, sending shivers down his spine. He would have to step away, breathe, and remind himself that this was not destruction, but creation. This was taking what was broken and making it whole, or at least, making it meaningful again. Albert came by often, his initial skepticism slowly giving way to a quiet admiration. "It's different, André," he'd say, circling a particularly striking piece, a sculpture made from several pieces of salvaged, partially burnt walnut, its natural grain peeking through the black. "Dark, but powerful. I see it." André even started accepting small donations of charred wood from other fire survivors in the community, people who had lost homes or businesses. Each piece came with its own silent story of devastation, and André, in turn, worked to give them a new voice. One day, Rhys Evans came calling. Rhys was an art historian and gallery owner from the city, known for her sharp eye and willingness to champion unconventional artists. She'd heard whispers filtering through the local grapevine about the fire artist and his unusual medium. She found André in his apartment, surrounded by his dark, beautiful creations. She spent an hour, silently walking through the pieces, her brow furrowed in concentration. André, nervous, tried to explain his process, the symbolism. "You don't have to explain, Mr. Walker," Rhys said, her voice soft but firm, her gaze fixed on a large wall piece, a mosaic of varying shades of charred wood and ash, depicting a fractured yet resilient landscape. "It speaks for itself." She turned to him, her eyes bright with a professional intensity. "This is extraordinary, André. Truly. It's not just art, it's a narrative. A profound statement on loss, resilience and transformation. You're not just making art from the fire, you're making art about the fire, about what it means to rebuild, to redefine oneself." Her words were a balm to his scarred soul. She saw it. She truly saw it. "I'd like to feature your work, André," she said, her voice decisive. "A solo exhibition. We'll call it From the Ashes." The exhibition planning became André's full focus. He worked tirelessly, each piece imbued with deeper meaning. He crafted a series of memory boxes using charred wood, each containing a small, abstract sculpture of ash, representing a lost object or a cherished moment. He created larger, more ambitious sculptures, some reaching towards the ceiling, resembling ancient, burnt trees, their branches made of fused ash, bearing unseen fruit. Reese was meticulous in her curation. She wrote a powerful introduction for the exhibition catalogue, detailing André's journey, the unique properties of his medium, and the universal themes his art explored. Albert, ever the practical one, helped André transport the fragile pieces, his gruff demeanor softening into pride. The opening night of From the Ashes was surreal. The gallery, usually a bright space, was subtly lit to highlight the textures and shadows of André's work. People moved slowly, speaking in hushed tones, drawn into the profound silence and power of the pieces. André stood in a corner, watching. He saw faces contort in understanding, in empathy, in quiet awe. He heard comments like, "It's so raw, beautiful and heartbreaking, and I never thought destruction could be so eloquently expressed." He spoke briefly that night, stumbling over his words at first, the emotion welling up. 2 years ago, he began, his voice cracking, "I lost everything. My home, my livelihood, my identity. I felt like I was a piece of burnt wood myself, hollowed out, waiting to crumble. But the fire, it also left me these materials, these stories. It taught me that even in utter devastation, there is a core of something resilient. Something that can be reborn, not into what it was, but into something new, something perhaps even stronger." He gestured to a large triptych, 3 panels, each depicting a stage of the fire, the initial destructive blaze, the smoking ruins, and finally, a landscape where small, ash-painted figures were beginning to rebuild, their forms emerging from the very destruction that had consumed them. "This art," André continued, finding his voice, "it's not just about what was lost. It's about what remains. It's about finding purpose in the debris, beauty in the char, and hope in the ash. It's about transforming pain into creation." A wave of applause swept through the gallery. Reese beamed at him, and Albert, standing at the back, gave a rare, full smile and a proud nod. André Walker was no longer just a fire survivor. He was an artist, reborn from the ashes, his work a poignant testament to the enduring human spirit. His hands, once stained with the grime of loss, now shaped the very remnants of that loss into symbols of hope. The fire had taken everything, but it had also given him a voice, a unique medium, and a profound understanding of rebirth. His art, dark yet luminous, served as a beacon, reminding all who saw it that even from the deepest devastation, something beautiful, something profoundly meaningful could rise. The smell of smoke still lingered in his memory, but now, it was accompanied by the faint, sweet scent of new beginnings. That will be all for today. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button. Goodbye.